Welcome back to the Strato Automation Technical channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a general overview of our BZ424 VAV controller here, which is very similar to our BZ122 controller outside of some minor differences in your point count and some small functionality differences. But like I said, here's a 424, BZ424. And I have taken the plate cover off here so I can see the PCB and kind of show you your way around this controller. So to start, I'll go over this right side here. So on top here we have our USB COM, so this is our micro USB port here, and this is where you'll plug in your USB micro to USB-A cable here. This would go into your computer, and that's how you would communicate with our controllers. One thing to watch out for here is you want to pull straight out. If you're not careful, you can rip this port right off, or break the solder between the port and the board, and then you won't be able to communicate with your controller. Your MSTP will be all messed up. So that's just one thing I've seen. Be careful with that port. Try not to break it off. Right below that we have our MSTP terminal. So this is where you'll hook up your network to connect to your other controllers, as well as your end-of-line jumper here. On the left of that, underneath you have your T-zone, so your TZ-COM terminal, where you'll power and connect up your T-zone control or T-zone sensors. And here you have your end-of-line. So this should always be here for the end-of-line in the right position here, shown by the cover. Below that we have our analog inputs, as well as our jumper for each one, whether it's temperature resistive input, or if it's a current input or a voltage input. Below that we have our two analog outputs. Below that we have our four binary outputs, and then at the bottom here we have our power terminal. Moving on, right here is our airflow sensor. One thing to watch out for here, if you're having issues or it doesn't seem to be working right, I would take the cover off and make sure that everything is hooked up properly and that they're crossed like this. On rare occasions, these might come loose, and that could be causing some issues or giving you inaccurate readings. So just one thing to watch out for there. Up here on the top left, we have our two dip switch rails. Top is for configuring your address. So these first 7 here are for the address, and the 7th or the 8th one is for your DLM reset. So to do a DLM reset, you'd want to have the controller powered on. You'd raise dip switch 8, count to, I don't know, 10 or so, power the controller off, count to about 10 again, power the controller back on, make sure it's on, and then flip this off. And have to wait till the beep before you flip that down, and your controller, the app config will have been wiped, and you'll have a fresh configuration to work from. So for the baud rate, you'll be using these first 3, 1, 2, and 3. I'll put the different ways you can set the baud rate on the screen. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 will not be used, so just leave those down. And lastly, I'll move on to the actuator here. So this is our Belimo actuator, 45 inch-pounds. Here you have the brake, pretty standard if you need to set the starting position, as well as your switch here if you need to set your starting position as from 0 or 1, wherever your arrow is pointing. As well as in the software, you can configure, reverse direct acting based on how you have everything set up in your box. And then finally, these terminals here, this is a floating actuator. So this is the dedicated actuator terminal on the left-hand side of the board. And if you're hooking up your own actuator, a different one that comes standard with the board, there's also an analog output terminal here. It might be hard to see on the camera footage here, but it says AO, and you can power it 24 volts and stuff like that. So if you don't have to use this actuator, you can still use this terminal and not eat up any of your analog outputs or binary outputs over here. So this has kind of just been a simple overview, kind of showing you around the controller, and some things to watch out for when you're installing and setting it up, things like that. As always, Thank you for watching and have a great day.